Okay, we're coming down to the final two records for the classic albums month. I've been having a great time with these. I hope that you guys have had some fun as well and kind of rediscovered some of those classic albums. And yeah, these last two records are ones that I thought I had already reviewed because of how classic and how timeless they are. But yeah, it turns out I haven't. So let's dive in and talk about an album that really revolutionized electronic music. Oxygene by Jean-Michel Jarre. So Jean-Michel Jarre is a French electronic music kind of pioneer and aficionado. You know, he kind of got his start in the early to mid 70s. He put out two records before Oxygene, Deserted Places in 1973, and then a soundtrack for Les Grands Brûlés, I believe is how you pronounce it, the original soundtrack to that. Kind of in the same vein that like Tangerine Dream was kind of doing, along that same kind of vein. And so, yeah, when Oxygene came out in 1976, you know, you really only had a handful of electronic music, and a lot of it was very like synth based or Moog or Moog based or, you know, the Mellotron based. There wasn't a whole lot of like really experimenting of the different frequencies and sounds outside of Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze, and even within like the Wendy Carlos and even like Vangelis, but that was pretty much it. So you kind of had these little camps of all these little like electronic style of music, and a lot of it was based on atmosphere. A lot of it was kind of to help pad the track out, very soundscapey and very like soundtracky in that sense. And when Jean-Michel Jarre came out with Oxygene, he really, like, what he did with electronic music is he expanded the scope. He showcased that you could make this kind of symphony of sound by constructing new compositions within that kind of essence. You know, like Wendy Carlos was doing a lot of amazing things on the switched on Bach side of things by using the Moog and the synthesizers in that kind of a sense. But yeah, what Jean-Michel was doing was kind of taking it the next step forward and really playing around with what the electronic soundscape could be and what the landscape could do. And yeah, in one sense, it was also a very prog album, and that's part of the reason why I fell in love with it. It was in my dad's collection of records way back when, because it's essentially in the same vein that, say, like a Mike Oldfield Tubular Bells is one track across two sides. This is one track that's segmented along 6 different phases. And I love that these guys are definitely on the longer side of things. You know, we go from anywhere between, say, the shorter 2, almost 3-minute track of Oxygene Part 3, but going right into the 10-minute mark of Oxygene Part 5. And what I love is the overlay of sounds. You know, unlike Klaus Schulze that did a lot of really great soundscapey, very mood setting, very vibes in that sense, what Jean-Michel was doing was taking those vibes and then constructing something physical out of it, like actually providing something permanent on there. You know, he provided these very meaty and very tangible essences. Like, I love when we get into parts 1 and 2 and you have this very tangible like like it's very toccata in that sense. You know, it's got that kind of Bach toccata and fugue style within it. So it's almost as if he's kind of blending the two camps that were kind of like really prominent at that time. He also did a lot of really interesting things in terms of sound tempo as well. Like my dad always used to call it the popcorn fart, but it was that very like syncopated, like kind of a sound. And using that as one of the main rhythm sequences within the soundscapes and the sound format that we have on here. One of the things that I particularly love, and one of the reasons why I come back to this, and specifically Oxygene, because he would go to perfect these sounds in later albums like Equinox and I think like Zootlook was another one that I was just like, whoa, what are you doing here? Like, he really went into some experimental things that you could say maybe didn't quite work all that much. But one of the things, getting back to my main point, is the big grand sound that we have. Like, in one of the phases, we have this big boom, 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 boom. You know, it's very big in something that like a Rick Wakeman would do with his Six Wives of King Henry VIII. You know, this big, grandiose, massive sound that was like this big chiming of a bell that was utilized within the electronic soundscapes. I couldn't believe some of the things that I was hearing. And when I first was listening to this was like in the mid 2000s. So, you know, you got a number of years kind of behind you at this point, and it still sounds so fresh and so new. And a part of this is Jean-Michel Jarre's ability to make sounds that are timeless. You know, I go back and I listen to a lot of Tangerine Dream and a lot of Vangelis, and I'm like, yeah, this is either very 70s or very 80s in terms of sounding of the time. But whenever I go back to listen to Jean-Michel Jarre, I don't feel that kind of solidification of the decade. You know, it sounds very fresh. It sounds very new. It sounds very timeless because of the techniques that he was essentially pioneering and developing that nobody really has kind of played with since then. So that's one of the things that really draws me back to Oxygene is those big sounds, the orchestration of these very meaty and tangible hooks, along with some of those innovations he was doing with those like syncopated rhythm sections. It's purely instrumental as well, as you could probably tell, and it uses and utilizes all the electronic soundscapes. You know, there's no like analog well, I don't want to say analog music because that's not quite right, because at that time there was still a lot of analog sounds that he was playing with, but like there's no guitars, right? Like there's no drums, there's no bass. So in that case, everything is done through electronic means. So yeah, really, really interesting. And if you haven't listened to Oxygene at this point, I would highly, highly recommend it. In terms of just musical history and preservation, you really are doing yourself a disservice by not listening to this, because this really founded and shaped a lot of the electronic music going forward. You know, like he was utilizing a lot of the techniques that were kind of starting to be played with, and then revolutionized and like really, really created something completely new and completely unique. So if you haven't listened to Oxygene at this point, I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite albums ever. You know, I'll come back to it and still feel very fresh. He would go on to update this in 1997 with Oxygene's phases 7 through 13, and then once again with Oxygene 3 in 2016, which I've actually reviewed. And I feel like this trilogy of music really does showcase how each movement both utilizes the techniques that have been founded before and still revolutionizing the music to come later. Because you can sit down and listen to the entire suite, like parts 1, 2, and 3, and still feel as if it is a cohesive whole, a singular unit that really doesn't, like, it's not separated by these 5 to 6, 7 decades. You know, so in that case, I really applaud him for being able to recapture that lightning in a bottle by kind of presenting it in this kind of 3-step process. I don't think that was the original idea going in. You know, I don't think he was like, I think in the 90s I'm going to put out part 2, and then in the 2010s I'm going to put out part 3. I think he was just kind of riding the coattails of the success of the original. But it does go to show that, you know, this music still resonates and still works today. Absolutely go out and check out Oxygene. You know, it's a staple of anybody's musical discography. And as I mentioned, if you haven't listened to it, please go and do it. It's a classic for a reason. So that's what I've got about Oxygene by Jean-Michel Jarre. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know by commenting down below. We've got one more classic album. I'm pretty excited to talk about this one. This was another one that I was shocked that I didn't review at this point. So scratching it off my list and getting that one kind of finally put to bed. So yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. As I keep saying on all of these classic albums, I've been having a blast revisiting a lot of these albums, and I hope you've been having fun revisiting them as well. Because that's kind of one of the things that I'm hoping to get out of this, is that people will pick up some of these classic albums if they A, hadn't heard it before, or B, hadn't heard it in a while, just to kind of revisit it and kind of recontextualize some of these things. See if they still work in these times. So yeah. But that's about it for me. As I already said, thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.